William McKinley. McKinley.
Trump has an obsession. His favorite president,
William McKinley, highly underrated.
at the time he thinks America was richest,
In the 1890s, we were so wealthy.
all revolving around one word.
Tariffs. Tariffs. I love tariffs.
He loves tariffs. But why? And does he understand the effect they've had in the past? Well, for that, we need to go back to the dawn of Trump's favorite era. It all started with what was called the Gilded Age.
It's not quite as simple as that.
Maybe you've seen the show, but there's another America hiding behind the opulence.
It's impossible to argue with him because he's not talking about facts.
Margaret Macmillan is an award-winning historian.
America was not at its riches. It wasn't a particularly happy society. There was a huge division between the rich and the poor, and the condition of the poor was appalling. They didn't have a lot of protections that they have now.
Which brings us to this guy, the politician who Trump admired so much, he renamed a mountain.
And we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs.
President Trump is a 20th century man operating in a 21st century economy who wants to take us back to the 19th century. The world is just so different today.
Douglas Irwin is a world-renowned expert on trade and the politician once described as the Napoleon of protection.
He's a very talented Republican politician. He represented a district in Ohio, which produced a lot of steel, which is where his interest in tariffs came from.
In Congress before he was president, McKinley instituted aggressive tariffs on imports to grow American manufacturing. But along with growing the number of factories, prices also grew.
He was the tariff king.
And so the effect of the McKinley tariffs?
It backfired completely on McKinley and the Republicans who were in power at the time, and eventually led to them losing the presidency, the House, and the Senate.
History podcaster Craig Baird says aggressive tariffs also affected an election north of the border. Sound familiar?
In 1891, with the federal election, it actually had Johnny MacDonald really campaigning on the tariffs and on Canadian nationalism and starting trade elsewhere, and that led him to win the 1891 election.
The thing is, for all his adoration, Trump ignores what happened when McKinley actually became president and his perspective shifted.
He was still a Republican, still a protectionist, but he saw that there were markets in the world to be had. The U.S. had this great industrial expansion, and the U.S. should be more engaged in global trade.
In fact, in 1901, just days before he was assassinated, McKinley made a speech promoting friendly trade relations, saying commercial wars are unprofitable. So, lesson learned, right? And yet in just a few decades, Americans would tangle with them again. So it's time to talk about the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. I know, try to contain your excitement, except you might have heard of this one.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act.
So after the stock market crash of 1929, Republicans wanted to protect American businesses, but
it just made things worse. You know, you might think that if you reduce your imports, that you might give the economy a little bit of boost because you're going to shift some of that to domestic production. But if other countries are also throwing up trade barriers, that means your exports are going to go down too.
For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing.
As a young man, President Ronald Reagan felt the effects of tariffs firsthand.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition.
The lessons of the Great Depression saw the Republicans embracing the gospel of free trade until Trump.
We keep repeating certain things, and there's always a number of decades between stuff like this because we forget what actually happened, and we start looking at it again through rose-colored glasses.
Flash forward to 2018, during Trump's first term. Tariff time once again. The target?
China.
After a series of tit-for-tat tariffs, Trump applied levies on $200 billion worth of Chinese products.
Frankly, it's going to make us a much stronger, much richer nation.
Is it fair to say that prices went up after the tariffs went into effect in the first term?
There are a number of academic studies on that, and they show exactly that the tariffs were passed through to consumers, so it was not a tax on China. It was a tax on American consumers.
So to recap, numerous times in America's history, tariffs made tension and prices rise. And yet here we are again, tariffs already applied on a variety of Canadian sectors, and now the US and China facing off in an escalating tariff battle. Trump thinks China will blink. Others aren't so sure.
I don't think he understands much about the Chinese past, about the strong desire of the Chinese to become a world power again and to resume what they see as their rightful place on the world stage.
As trade alliances weaken, Macmillan sees echoes of the years leading up to the First World War.
And we know that it's very, very hard to build up trust between people or between groups of people or between nations. And we're seeing now how easy it is to destroy it. And so what I'm concerned about is the world is dividing itself up into mutually hostile blocks.
I wonder just what it feels like for you right now, Margaret, where I've had the feeling the past few months where, like, oh, this is what it feels like when history is happening in front of you.
I feel exactly the same. I mean, I've studied some very interesting bits of the past, often catastrophic bits of the past, but I didn't think I'd be living through one.